Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Pyro's Projects. Hopefully this episode is going to be the finale of the actual stove build itself. I still have to build the heat shield with the blower, but that'll come a little bit later. As hot as it is outside, I don't think I really need that just yet, but I know I did screw up and I forgot to order a vital piece for the finale of this build. I don't have the lug nuts to put the final front piece together. I'll have those Monday at some point. So I'll get the video finished up on Monday. I know it's going to be a late arrival for the video, but it's my fault and I apologize. So let me show you what I do have right now and what I'm going to be doing, and then we'll get right into it. Okay, here's what I ordered. I don't remember the name of the website now, but it's a website that actually sells all the parts and pieces to rebuild stoves. So I got my piece of glass. This is 7¼ inches in diameter. The hole that I'm putting in front of, I think, was right at 6¾ or 7 inches. I'm gonna have to remeasure that. I've got the gasket tape for the glass that you put around the edge to isolate it from the metal so it can kind of sort of float between the door and what's going to hold the glass to the door. And then I got myself some fiberglass rope and adhesive to put in the groove here when I stack the body. This is actually only going to be for the top groove, because I don't know if I'm going to have enough to do both. So I'm more worried about the top because that's where all the smoke and everything is going to rise to. So let me get this stuff put away and I'll show you what I come up with to cut the hole for this piece of glass. So after measuring all kinds of stuff to try and find myself a template to cut with, I found this glass pot lid that I don't ever use, and it is 7½ inches, but it's got a little recessed lip here. So what I'm hoping I can do is use this, angle my plasma torch at just a very slight angle, go all the way around it, and then I'll grind the edge off the thing and see if the glass will fit inside of there like I want it to. I need just a little tiny bit of space for the glass to expand and contract in the door as it heats up. I don't know how hot that glass is going to get, but I'd rather play it safe than sorry. So then the next piece I have to cut is going to be, this will be the spacer that the glass will sit inside of. And then I have to cut another piece to actually sandwich that spacer in this part of the rim, because the glass will sit right on the back side of here. This will space it, and then there'll be another one to sandwich the glass between this and that last piece. And then what I actually have is the lug studs that go into these holes. And the part I forgot to order was the lug nuts that I can cinch down to this to hold everything together. I wanted it to look like an actual mounted rim. It's the look I'm after. Somebody else might not like it, but that's what I want it to be. So that's what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, I can start the hinge, but I cannot finalize the hinge for this door until I have the lug nuts so I can see how much space they're going to take up and what room I'm going to have between them to attach the hinge to. So that'll be also tomorrow, unless it comes late in the day, and then I might have to finish it on Tuesday. We'll see. I have thought about just doing this part, putting it up, and then doing the second part, but I want it to be one solid video to finalize the stove body. The other thing I did notice when I had it in the last video or video before, when I had it all stacked up to see what it would look like, I put this crossbar in so that I could use my little crane to pick it up and stack it. But I need to take off this corner because the top piece actually rocks on this, and I don't want that. So I'm going to probably 45 it off I might 45 it and then, cut it this way. I don't know. Might make it too challenging. But I was thinking I might 45 it, slice it along here, and then fold the tab back in and weld it. If it gets to be too much of a pain to try and do it that way, I might just 45 it and I'll see if I maybe leave it. So I'll get started. I'll set up the camera on the tripod, get you guys some fast forward of me plasma cutting, and we'll catch up in a little bit. Okay, I got it all cut out. See, I used that pot lid to do the centerpiece, and then I found it's a metal, it's a front for another fan, it's just round, that I set on top of here to cut the outside circle. So this is the goal. This is the actual door face. Then this is the spacer ring. And my piece of glass is going to sit just like that. Then I'll build another ring that'll go on here, and it'll sandwich the glass in between, and then that tape will give it that little bit of cushion in the room to expand and contract and do what it needs to do. So I'm going to get the glass back out of here. You can see it's right there. I'll put the glass back away, and then I'll get the next piece of plate, and I got to find stuff that will match the circles so that I can cut the next ring, that way I can get it sandwiched. And once I get the other ring cut, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack the two rings together because they won't need to separate after I'm done. But then I got to mark these holes and get those either drilled or cut out to accept the bolts. I'll find the bolts real quick and show you what I'm dealing with. Okay, so here's the bolts that I got. What these are going to do is it'll sandwich the two plates on the inside and this rim. Let's get this moved a little bit so I can put, and then it'll come up through, and I'll have the lug nut on the outside so that it looks like a mounted rim. So let me find some stuff to get the next plate cut, and we'll show you that. Okay, here's what I found. I have this big chunk of steel bollard that goes into like a parking lot for around a driveway or something. So I measured it from the outside to the outside, and it was just a hair more than 6.5 inches. Measuring the hole in my glass, or measuring the hole in the rim, I needed between 6.5 and 6 3/4 inches. So I figured this should work perfect. So what I did is I pre-drilled a hole somewhere in there and just went around it with the plasma cutter real slow to cut it. I had to go really, really slow because I think this is the maximum thickness that this plasma cutter will do. So I couldn't obviously, just blow through it and do it. I ended up having to turn up my amperage on the plasma cutter all the way to the max, which was 50 amps, to get it to cut. And I had to go slow, but I got it. Now I have to let this thing cool down because it's so hot. If I touch it, it'd take the skin right off my fingers. So I'm going to let that cool down for a little while. I'm going to find the next piece of plate that I need to cut to make the final ring, and we'll go from there. All right, so here's where I'm at, everybody. I've got my two rings cut. This one will sit first. Then once I tape my piece of glass and get it ready, I want to drop it and break my glass. That will sit in there like so. And then this ring will sit on the top and sandwich it. All I've got left to do is I'm actually going to tack these two metal rings together, and then I've got to do the holes for the lug studs to go through and clamp everything together. So I'm going to work on getting that dealt with, and once I get the holes and everything done, I'll show you the final product minus the lug nuts that are going to sandwich the whole thing together. So, all right, so here's where I'm at now. I got my 2 plates welded, or I tacked them together. I tacked all the way around the outside edges as well. Got all my holes cut out so that these studs can just sit in there. Now, what I'm planning on doing, which unfortunately, due to my stupidity, I don't have them, but I'm waiting on the lug nuts from Amazon to show up. Supposedly, they're due in on Monday. I'm hoping they get in early so that I can get this wrapped up and post Monday night, which I guess when you're watching this would be tonight. However that works. But unfortunately, I cannot do my hinges until I have the lugs, or the studs, not the studs, the lug nuts. My goodness. Doesn't help to be tired, I guess. So that I can tie everything together, because what I'm going to do is put this inside of that door frame, cinch everything together so that these are nice and tight in here, and then I'm actually going to weld them in place where they belong so that it'll go back together nice and smooth later. So, yeah. Okay, I grabbed that centerpiece so I could actually show you what I'm talking about. This is how it's going to stick out, and then I'll tighten the lug nut onto here to sandwich everything nice and tight. And I figure with having all 10 of them in there and tight, when I weld these in place, it should come back apart and go back together real easy like. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of my mesh on the floor and the surrounding area. I'm actually going to set the main body back down on the floor so that once I have all the pieces or the lug nuts and I can bolt this together, I can actually start building the door hinges. I'll go ahead and show you what I'm actually going to use for the door hinge here. I have 2 of these brake clevises from when I was working on semis. They just were left over from a job and were going to get thrown away. So I snagged them up. And what my thought process is, I'll weld these to the main body. Then I've got this nut and bolt set here. Now the nut is larger than the bolt, so it'll slide right through. So I'll weld this to the main body, and then this little nut right here is what I'm going to build off of to go to this door. But I need the lug nuts tight and in place so I can see where I can attach to my door. What I'm hoping to use is a couple old wrenches. I have to see if I have some that'll fit this. I believe this is 3/4 or 19 millimeter. So I'll look through what I've got and see if I have anything that'll fit these that I can then use as the hinge body or the rest of the hinge. And then my goal is to take one of the nuts and actually weld another wrench to that I'm going to use as the lock lever to fold over and lock the door closed. But unfortunately, like I said, due to my stupidity, forgetting to order the lug nuts in time, I can't do any of that today. So I'll pick this up tomorrow and see what happens. Hey everybody, it's the next day. I got a surprise delivery last night. The lug nuts I was waiting for showed up around 7:15 last night. So I came out here first thing this morning and got to work and realized I'd never bothered to start to record. So I'm going to show you what the goal was with those lug nuts and where I'm at building the hinge real quick. So let me get the camera flipped around and I'll show you what's going on. All right. So this is what I was talking about with the lug nuts. I pulled it together with those lug studs, and then I've got that little gap right in here. Ah, shoot. Right in here that the glass will go into, and I've got the spacer tape to take up a little bit of room and give it room to expand. So that is what I was talking about. So it actually looks like the rim is mounted to a hub, even though it's really not. Now, for my hinges, you can kind of sort of see what I've got going on over here. I took those slack adjuster yokes and welded them to a couple of exhaust manifold spacers, and then welded the spacers to the rim. My thought process is I'm going to go from these nuts to the rim here, between right in here, to create the actual hinge to flip it open. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to use for the piece from here to here. I have an idea. I'm going to mess with it a few minutes. If I can make it work, I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm actually going to do. Okay, so I think I've come up with an idea for this hinge. What I've done is I cut myself a piece of chain, and I welded in the nut that goes in here to the end of the chain. Get this set in there, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got this little piece cut at an angle. I'm going to get that set up so I can weld that to the rim through this link, and then I'll pull the chain tight and actually build the actual bar or brace to make it solid. So I'm going to put the camera in the tripod. I'll do the first one so you can see what I'm talking about, and then I'll just go ahead and knock out the other one. And I'm still thinking about what I'm going to do for my latch on the other side of the rim, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with that side. Okay, so now having two free hands, I can actually show you what I was talking about. Take this and this guy, and I'm going to weld that one right there, and then I'll weld the chain solid so that it creates the actual piece to hold the door in place. So I'll go ahead and get that started so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. Then I'll bang out the other one. And there we go. That's what the hinge is going to look like when it's all said and done. So I'll get the other one set up. I'll fully weld everything so that it stays solid and I don't break any of my tacks. And then we'll go from there. All right, I'm back with a latch system now. What I did is I cut a couple of wrenches apart and I found this weird little contraption. I don't have no idea what it is, but so what I've got is a wrench coming from the top of the rim. I cut this end off and welded it here so I have a handle to pull it open. And this thing, I have no idea what it is, but if I turn it, oops, and flip it, now I can open my door. Right now, this thing's obviously falling down inside this other wrench. It was just an old rusty 13 millimeter wrench. I think it was a Pittsburgh or some, I don't know. It was an old rusty wrench that was in the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket that I have. But what I'm going to do is let this cool off because this is really, really hot from welding right now. I'm going to let this cool down, and then I'm going to get the whole thing stacked in the corner where it's going to sit and show you what the actual finished product is. So I'll be back with you in a few minutes. All right, here's the finished product standing in its corner. This is actually where it's going to sit in my shop to heat this little building. The blue burl sitting over here is not staying there. It's just tucked out of the way for right now while I'm working. It's actually going to get a permanent home somewhere else in the building. So, but wanted to show you what the finished product is. I do have a chain that I just vice gripped to the top of this rim real fast so that I can get everything stacked up in place. That's not going to stay there. It might stay there. I might actually weld it in there just so because. But right now I do not have the glass in the door. I did test fit it earlier before I actually assembled everything. But I took it back out because I'm going to have to paint this thing and I don't want to have to remove the glass and paint, put it back and whatever. As far as the door goes, I'm going to have to do a little bit of tweaking because I didn't take into account when I stood it up that the door sagged just a little bit. But you can see here, I just turn this latch, flop this out, and there we go. Door's open. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this build. I know I certainly did. It turned out pretty much exactly what I had in mind. Oh, one more thing. That ash drawer that I made in the bottom, I actually used one of the valve stems that I took out of the rim to make my handle to pull it out. So thanks for following along on the build. I appreciate it. If you liked it, please like and comment. Let me know what you think. And here shortly, we'll be getting started on the next project, which I think is going to be my welding cart that I can use to drag out into my gravel driveway.